I'm Aaron Sagers, and this is Talking Strange.
Hello, spooky nerds, and welcome to Talking Strange, a paranormal pop culture show with the Den of Geek network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. I'm your host, journalist, author, researcher of weird things, Aaron Sagers, also appearing as host of the Netflix series 28 Days Haunted, and you can catch me on the Travel Channel and Discovery Plus show Paranormal Caught On Camera. Well, it's Evil Dead Rise week here on Talking Strange. The new movie opens April 21st, and it is the fifth installment of the Evil Dead franchise, created by director Sam Raimi, producer Rob Tapert, and of course, star Bruce Campbell, who plays Ashley J. Williams, Ash. So those initial round of films included Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, which was sort of the reboot of Evil Dead. There was Army of Darkness, the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV series, as well as the 2013 Fede Álvarez movie, Evil Dead. Now, Evil Dead Rise is a standalone film that nonetheless exists within the same Evil Dead universe. And written and directed by Irish filmmaker Lee Cronin, it is just a truly gloriously fun horror flick that's going to make you cringe, laugh, and scream. I really love it. And I definitely got squeamish, which is a testament to this flick and why you need to see it in theaters, why you need to be surrounded by an audience when you check this out. Now, in the main podcast episode this week, we have interviews with stars Alyssa Sutherland and Lily Sullivan, and they play sisters Ellie and Beth. And Ellie is also a single mom, and she kind of runs afoul of the Deadites and becomes the possessed creature of the film. We also spoke to Lee Cronin in that main podcast episode. So those interviews took place in early February, but we couldn't get enough of Evil Dead Rise, and we couldn't get enough of Lee Cronin. So as we head into opening day of Evil Dead Rise on April 21st, I spoke to Lee again about how he is feeling about the film's early reaction, about why you need to see it with an audience, and we also chat about Irish folk horror, which is obviously a topic that I really love, just folk horror and folklore overall. And we talked about the whole process of marketing a horror movie, and just got a lot more out of Lee. So without further ado, here's Evil Dead Rise writer and director Lee Cronin. And here we are, Lee Cronin. It's kind of great because having seen Evil Dead Rise months ago, I think it was February, maybe even early February.
You saw that early? Okay, wow.
Yeah. And not being able to talk about it, and then seeing this rollout, this kind of wave of chit-chat, word of mouth and everything start to build, it's incredible. And I've been telling people sort of, I'm not allowed to talk about it, but you got to frickin' see Evil Dead Rise. Now here we are. We're just out. How are you feeling about everything? It does seem like the vibe, the kind of the shift has been very positive.
Well, first of all, I'm really happy for your excitement, and thank you for spreading the good word of the Book of the Dead. That's appreciated greatly. I'm really pleased that people are having a good time with the movie. Like, it's a scary movie, it's an intense movie, it's a pretty crazy movie, but overall, I wanted it to be an entertaining movie for people. And the responses so far are that people are having a really good time, you know, in theaters, at the cinema, which is so important to me. I envisage this movie as a big screen audience interaction spectacle. And I'm just really, I don't want to say relieved, but I'm humbled and excited, I suppose, by the fact that people are getting such a great kick out of watching it.
And it is a great cinema movie experience, because I know you had initially planned it to be in theaters, and then there was the chatter that it would be released on streaming, and then it was back to theaters.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy watching horror at home, or all movies at home, but this is this feels like one that you need to get that collective like shudder, that groan, that uncomfortable experience when certain gags hit, you know?
Yeah, I think there is something like I've seen it with audiences and feeling the ripple effect of some of those moments. I think is something really special, especially when that collective experience might be you being there with a couple of friends, but then you're also sharing that with like a lot of strangers. I think it's a wonderfully old school experience that you don't always get to have at the theater anymore. So yeah, to me, like shoulder to shoulder is a great way to watch this movie. Although then again, people like their nice, big, comfortable reclining seats right now. I dare you to stay reclined during this movie, though.
I think I mentioned this to you before, but when I saw it in February, it was at a Warner Brothers screening room, and it was only me in the audience, and just a cup of coffee. And I wish I had had other people there, but there was the moment with the eye where that is like my thing. Like that's the thing that gets to me. And I had no one to get all cringy with, where I'm just like, oh, no, like no. So now I look forward to seeing it again so people can see my visible discomfort.
So I've got to ask you, having watched it, are you, in terms of going to watch it again, are you going to go when like kind of opening weekend when it's busy, like try and have that shared experience?
Oh yeah, I for certain. I've got a couple friends that are those horror adjacent fans where they're not hardcore, but they'll go when something feels like an event movie or when I'm forcing them to go. And a couple of them, I'm very much looking forward to seeing that reaction. So I will bring them with me.
You're going to have to update me as to how that goes, how they survive.
Let me ask you this: like when you're doing these junket interviews, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have this kind of attention on your work.
Yeah.
But when you're interviewing with people, what is a sign to you that people just don't get it? No, you don't have to call out anyone specifically, but when you get that certain question or you get that just that kind of intonation from someone, a sign that they just don't get what Evil Dead is and what you're trying to do.
I think this is kind of like, this sounds like a politician's answer, but I'll go for it. I did a large junket yesterday where I think I had about 60 short interviews. And for the most part, everybody was kind of overwhelmingly blown away by the experience. There's those that are shaken, by it. But there's also people that said they don't typically go for horror, but they loved the cinematic spectacle of it. So I'm okay if somebody's not a horror fan, but they can go in and kind of ride the wave of what this movie actually is. And I really do hope this film brings in some crossover fans, that kind of way. Like, as in, I think people like those friends of yours that maybe haven't quite seen a movie like this in a theatrical setting. I'm really hopeful that we can pull in more than the fans. Like, the way I kind of saw this was that it's a movie that fans can love and revel in, but also can take the hand of the uninitiated and bring them into the darkness of the Evil Dead universe as well. But yeah, I'm just hopeful for that. But so far, it's been, a really universally positive response. And, again, I'm just, I suppose, relieved and humbled by the fact that that's happened, because it doesn't happen every day. And I guess I hope what it is that it's the entertainment factor of this movie, the experience of this movie, that makes people come out of the cinema looking like they've been in a wind tunnel.
Mm-hmm. When you're experiencing those kinds of nice words and good audience reaction and seeing that early positive result on, Rotten Tomatoes, which seems like it's the bellwether for things these days. At what point, or do you get comfortable going into this, or do you still kind of just keep your fingers crossed until after the first opening weekend? Because this is a big project for anyone, but it's also a big project. This is still early in your kind of feature film career.
Yeah, I think, like, from my point of view, there's certainly, like, I think that it's like waves of relief, and it's almost like when we had the world premiere at South by Southwest, hearing the audience response, hearing the laughter alongside the screams and the shouting and all of that stuff, that was the first little turning point for me, getting to experience that, because I want this movie to be something where there is a certain amount of kind of, dark levity in the film as well. So that was kind of relief point one. And then the instant reactions online were overwhelmingly positive, followed up by overwhelmingly positive reviews. But then the movie has to spread wider. More people have to watch, more people have to engage. And in the process of that at the moment, as more reviews come in, and, we're very close to the release of the movie right now. I suppose we're just a tick over a week away. So from my point of view, like, I feel like I've delivered on my promise to the people that I made this movie with, the people that trusted me, and I've delivered on what it is that I wanted to bring to the big screen. And I could only do that because I had an amazing team of people to work with. Like, the cast and the crew on this movie, like, were just really, really special. And I hope for all of us that audiences turn up, and I think horror's having a great moment. So I really hope that people come out, and I really hope that word of mouth, because I think there are people that will go and watch this movie unsure of what they're going to see, and potentially will have an experience that they maybe haven't had before or for a long time in the theater. So I really hope that the film can cling on with its bloody claws and spread wider and just get known by more people and get seen by more people.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the amazing cast and crew, and I want to talk a little bit about the cast. I've had the fortune of speaking to both Alyssa and Lily, and so I was kind of curious, and it seems like they've really developed a true sisterly bond.
Yeah, they did.
Not just playing sisters, but it seems like off screen.
Sweeter bond than where this movie leads them.
Yeah. Which of those two do you think you put through the ringer the most?
Wow. They both had very different experiences, if that makes sense. So, like, Alyssa obviously had to sit in the makeup chair every single day, but at times had a little bit less time on set. There's moments where she's locked out, and there's certain things where we're focusing in on other elements of possession, other characters. I think it was I don't want to sit on the fence here, but it was kind of equal, but in very, very different ways. I think Lily's, like, Alyssa's physicality got to perform in a slightly tighter box, whereas Lily had to kind of go quite wild and bash and bang and fight and push and pull and basically fight back against the control that Alyssa was able to kind of put on screen in a lot of ways. So I think Lily probably ended up with the most bruises, if you know what I mean, the most dings and the most knocks, whereas Alyssa probably had the greatest time sink in terms of being transformed into Ellie. And then for both of them, I think with Alyssa, she had to cross over into a place for an actor. It's a risky place to go and play this, this kind of, broad but terrifying kind of like anything goes character. And then for Lily on the other side, again, reflecting against that, her fear had to be so high all the time. And that went for all of the cast in the movie, actually, was the fact that, they had to come on set, and it's like, now you've got to get your heart rate right up there. Now you've got to be scared. And especially in shooting the movie in relative sequential order, each day got harder for everybody. They had to be more terrified and more broken down and have more makeup and try and escape harder. So the actors and the crew, we all kind of went on a journey together where it was reflective of the storyline, whereas it got harder, scarier, and more demanding physically and mentally.
And actually, Lily mentioned to me that, speaking of shooting somewhat sequentially, that early in the film, it's not really a spoiler to say that Alyssa dies, and then we have this moment of her in a bed. I think we even see that in one of the trailers. Yeah. So her character is there, and Lily sitting next to her, and it was this building moment of Alyssa's character reanimating.
Yeah.
Lily mentioned that directing that scene, or when she was performing that scene, she was having a hard time kind of getting the tonal beats, getting the scare factor coming together, and that you were actually tapping out the beats to the scene about, this is the scare, this is the scare. And it felt very like, I hate to say like indie, but it had an indie spirit to it, of like, this is a director really connecting, really being heavily involved in this, as opposed to a standoffish, aloof director, or even someone that's saying, I'm going to tell you specifically how to do this performance. And I just I don't really know what the question is. I just wanted to get your reaction on that, because it was just a fascinating little note.
Yeah, look, I try and have a very interactive relationship with my cast, and as often as possible, be close to the action with my monitor and not locked away in a tent somewhere, because I like to jump up and down and get involved. And I'm very precise about what I want in terms of especially timing and tempo with horror, and the moments of reaction and how they kind of work. But what was interesting was, like, on my previous movie, and often on my short films, I'd play music on set, to set a mood for the scene, but also sometimes time the tempo of camera moves to just see if I'm getting the creepy level just right in terms of how the camera proceeds forward, or, peeks around a corner or whatever. And because this movie is kind of, it's got a kind of loud, clashing punk opera kind of vibe to it, I didn't feel like that sort of mood music was going to work on set. So early on, as we started to enter the horror moments, I realized that maybe there was something missing. And at the same time, Lily was just having a hard time, because there's things happening, behind her shoulder. And when do I need to let the tension in? When do I realize what that is in this silent room? And just kind of, there was, what had actually happened, we were shooting a scene in an elevator that had all these cables hanging down. And the stunt supervisor had this kind of long wooden stick that he'd been using to point to cables when he needed them to be moved. And somehow it just ended up in sitting nearby on my monitor a few days later. So I kind of picked up this stick, and I had a metal water flask, and I just started tapping this ding, 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 ding sound, and would increase the power of that, or the speed of it, or the tempo, to then inform elements of Lily's performance. And Lily was the one that was particularly into this kind of idea. And then that kind of evolved into me having a variety of objects around me to make sound. So when people needed big reactions for a jump, I could slam this off this big plastic crate beside my monitor that would make this kind of ear-cracking sound for everybody. I'm sure the crew delighted in me making all this noise, but it was a really kind of interesting way of using sound to kind of conduct the timing of the scenes. And it became really valuable. Although just before the end of the shoot, because I wanted to, the joke on set was that it was known as either the attitude adjuster, was written on one side, and then if you flipped it over, it was called the performance probe. And someone stole it on me by the end of the shoot. They'd had enough of this sound that I'd made. But if I go back and work with that crew again, they'll be sad to hear that what I'd like to have is a tiny little mini drum kit there, so I can play all the sounds that I kind of need. But it was fun. It's great when an actor comes to you saying, I need something, and then you learn something new about your approach. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'd say if you went back and watched the rushes of this movie and listened to the soundtrack, like, there's all of this background ding, 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 and various different shouts and bangs and wallops going on.
Yeah. Do you play drums?
I did when I was younger, and then I sold my drum kit to buy a camcorder so I could start trying to make special effects sequences in my back garden. Okay. I would love to have a drum kit again. So yeah. I need to get the rhythm back. Just
put that in your contract for the next film.
That's in my rider. Yeah.
And actually, you mentioned just like music to set the tone. I do now want to see the Lee Spotify playlist for this film, even though you weren't necessarily playing it on set. I'm sure you still have some songs working in your brain that would apply to this.
Yeah, definitely. I think definitely when it comes to the creeps, like this, the score from John Carpenter's The Thing is one that I go back to quite a lot. There's a couple of really odd, creepy songs as well on the Tree of Life soundtrack that I've often used on set before. I can't remember the titles of the specific songs. But for setting that kind of mood, I remember years ago when I was making my first short film, like my first horror short, I'd done my student years, and then I hadn't actually made any horror in film school. I'd made comedy. And I was making my first horror short film called Through the Night. It's about a couple in a bedroom, and it had a lot of very deliberate tracking shots and things like that. And we'd cobble together a crew of essentially, whoever was available. And myself, my producer, John Campbell, had about $2,000 available to make this short. And the guy who was acting as a grip, he wasn't necessarily a grip. Everyone on set was just, let me help. I was playing music for strings from The Shining really loud over and over again in this small bedroom set. And he had a panic attack and had to leave, left the set and never came back. So I feel like creating an on-set atmosphere is something I can do. And it's something I hope to continue to do as I make more horror movies.
Yeah. We had spoken before about where we find the book is in this vault below the building where the church had kind of kept some of the things that they wanted to lock away. And that's a concept that could just be explored further in its own film. So I was curious, what else is in that basement aside from our Book of the Dead?
Yeah, I think there's, without going too deep in it, churches often have secrets, right? I think we've even seen that in movies like The Da Vinci Code and beyond. So to me, it's like, that idea that there would have been a variety of different things placed there, some probably things that were worth money that were then removed, and then there was just what was deemed the useless objects that were left behind, the paperwork and the records and the files. But what was forgotten about was the danger of this book that was buried there, or maybe it was very much intentionally left there because the danger of removing it would have been so much. But the genesis of the idea was from reading an article about in Ireland about, because really old buildings, really old banks, really old vaults, and how it had reached a moment in time where I can't remember whether it was 100 years or something, where like lock boxes that hadn't been claimed would then be opened, and what was inside would belong to the state. And my imagination just started to turn on that, of like the things that you could find. There was probably old money, weapons, love letters, historical things. And it made me think about how, the church with their own ecosystem would potentially have these places where they would hide their secrets.
Mm-hmm. Are you comfortable saying what the Bruce Campbell cameo is? I know someone had revealed it. My suspicion is that it's in the audio. But in the chance or the record,
sit tight on it till after release, because I still think people are having fun, maybe looking for it, and we'll have fun trying to seek it out in the cinema.
Okay.
So I think I'll hold fire until after release on that one.
Okay. Well, before we wrap up, we've spoke very briefly about it before, and we don't have a lot of time left, but I did want to get more of a sense of, if you were going to be telling Irish folk horror or just an Ireland-based horror movie, what story would you tell? And or what stories creeped you out as a kid? And let's face it, the parenthetical to this is that this is a big time for folk horror. And then recently, I just saw Innis Main, which is the Cornish folk horror, and and then Red Caps, which is like just bonkers Irish folk. So what would be the your fodder? What would you explore, or what creeped you out as a kid?
Well, with there being two parts to that, because I'm greedy, I do have a television series I've been developing for a couple of years with a writing partner of mine called Glenn Montgomery. And we hope it's kind of a catch-all for a lot of Irish folklore together. We've created this kind of mystery built around this strange condition that people get afflicted by, which in turn connects them back to these many different pillars of folklore. But the apex, I suppose, monster in that story is a derivative of the banshee. And that idea of hearing screaming at night or something outside your window that's forecalling death is quite a terrifying thing. And it's not I don't think it's particularly being interpreted or done amazingly on screen yet. And that's something that I'm quite drawn to, because the banshee slightly represents also that local ghost that every town has. And where I grew up, my small town, this little seaside village called Skerries, which is Skeries, but it sounds like Scaries when I say it. And just out the road from my town, there was a place called the Ladies' Stairs, which was this like old kind of footbridge over a railway track to a big country estate. And apparently there was like a kind of a blue lady that would hang around there and keen at the sea because her loved one died in the water. And those type of simple things would always get under my skin. And when I was younger, if we were ever at nighttime driving beneath the Ladies' Stairs, like traveling somewhere with my family in the backseat of the car, I'd know it was coming. And I'd always close my eyes and kind of hunch down for like 2 or 3 minutes till I knew it was well behind me, for the fear that I might see something on the Ladies' Stairs.
I love it. That's great.
That's a good title for a movie, The Ladies' Stairs, actually. Maybe I need to go there, just dig back into my hometown.
Yeah, I can't get enough. As someone that loves folklore and explores the paranormal and supernatural, and the other part of my job, I can't get enough of it.
Well, I hope to be able to bring you more in the future, stuff to dig into.
We certainly want to see more of this world, and even just seeing the photo the other day of all our Evil Dead heroines together on the park bench.
Very cool.
Teases out that there is more to explore. So.
It's a wide universe with many stories to be told in, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, I am over time, and I don't want to keep you, but Lee, I'm so happy for you. I'm happy for this film. I'm excited for it to be unleashed upon the world and to make people cringe in cinemas. And it's going to be a great ride for you. I'm very excited.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your support and for all the kind things you have to say about the movie. And I hope our both of our shared want is that lots of people go watch it, get entertained, get freaked out. I reckon some people will only be able to get halfway through their popcorn watching this movie because they'll drop the rest. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to audience reactions as the movie comes into the world.
I'm based in New York City, so New York City audiences, when it comes to horror, are amongst the best, I think. And so next week I think I'm going to see it twice. We've got a media screening, and then over the weekend. So we'll get a
Keep
couple
me updated on how the audience are.
Thank you, Lee. I'm sure we'll speak again in the future. Thanks so much, my friend.
All the best. Bye-bye. Take care.